Good morning, everyone. Hopefully the audio is working as intended. But let's get started. Good news, sun is up, Bitcoin's running. We can have today I have water. I don't have as much coffee readily available to me here. But if you have coffee, drink it. Coffee's good. I wish I had coffee. I had enough coffees today, though. Working's done. Make sure I'm set up. Okay. So before we talk about the story of the day, let's quickly go over what's going on in Japan. It looks yield curve control isn't working, and the Japanese central bank in the markets in order to stabilize things. So again, I've shared it on this show before, and I'll share it again. Maybe it's useful, maybe it's relevant. Morning in audio cutting in and out. Switched iPad mic again. Jeez. How about that? Better? What about? Thanks for warning. Okay, so Japan has intervened. The central bank has intervened, and I don't know where it came from. I don't know where I saw it, but in early Bitcoin, I saw an article that did a bit of, let's call right, about the motivations Satoshi Nakamoto had in choosing the name Satoshi Nakamoto. And I've sort of gone with it as true ever since happening. Okay, let me switch it back and see if it. But now, still happening now. I can see if they work. Let's see. Audio.
I mean, like, how do the settings change because I'm in a different place? I don't get it. Unplugged AirPods. Yeah, obviously. What about now? Any good? All right. Well, we've only got one more show from New York. Let's see. Yeah. So tomorrow's the last day we're going to be doing it from New York. So hopefully this doesn't create too much of a problem. We'll be back in our nice Vermont studio in 2 days. So this will be all gone by then. All right. Well, let me just put this on, and then we love the production value here. Isn't it great? Sounds good. Great. We're back in business. Sounds good. Okay. So I had this theory, and I've kept it with me forever since. And I only noticed it wasn't like wide. I assumed everyone thought this way. And I was in a taxi with some old Bitcoiners a few years ago in 2019. And good morning. Just here to see how you're going to react on Cuomo's debacle. Okay, we'll get to that. That's from Huru. Huru is saying we're going to see how you're going to react. We got other stuff. I don't know if anyone's seen. We'll get to that in a second. But we're going to get there. So the Japanese story. I had a theory years ago. And like I said, it was a bunch of Bitcoiners like laughed at me. You know, that's not, but they liked it. And I said this, that basically Satoshi Nakamoto chose the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto because they wanted to have the moral authority or whatever it was to say to America and the Federal Reserve, you are now Japan, right? I'm coming from the point of view of a Japanese person telling you, and remember the white papers released in the midst of the financial crisis, it's 08, 09, saying to America and the Federal Reserve, look what happened to Japan in the 90s. This is you now, right? This is you now. Yeah, sure. Not here to change the pronoun. Yeah, yeah. Of course, we're gonna get to there. We got a good thing on Kanye, and I'm gonna order my Kanye 2024 hat shortly, guys. The 2024 hats he's been wearing. We're gonna start wearing that. I should wear it with a Black Lives Matter T-shirt though. Maybe I'll wear a Black Lives Matter and sort of write and pen Bitcoin Lives Matter, but it is a BLM issue, right? It's a Bitcoin lives, Black Lives Matter, right? So. And I think the 2024 hat is a perfect combo, perfect outfit right now for politics, right? A Kanye 2024 hat and a BLM shirt, love it. So so I always had this idea that Satoshi Nakamoto used the pseudonym to have the authority to say to America, you're in for what's happening in Japan, right? We as the Japanese have experimented with fiat currency more than any other central bank, more than any other economy. They've come in now and are at a point where the game is over. They already own the entire stock market of Japan, right? They bought everything the central bank did in the 90s and 2000s. So they own basically all the equity in all the Japanese companies. They can't get inflation going. They're dealing with the deflationary effects over years. And now they're doing yield curve control, which is a super devastating policy. It just means that you're basically creating a market to buy the bonds way in the future. And that's what's going on throughout the world right now. The UK gilt thing, that's what happened, right? We have a central bank intervening to buy bonds to make sure there's demand and these things stabilize so that every other interest rate falls into line. And it's basically a way to create a perverted low interest rate in the future so that your current interest rate is where it's at. And the Japanese economy really is the most sophisticated in the world when it comes to the deploying this thing. And I've noticed it in all the time that I've traveled to Japan. I've gone to Japan for years now. And I started going in the World Cup time, 2002. That was the first time I went. I lived there as a lawyer in 08, 09. I've gone back many, many times. I helped set up CoinDesk Japan, which runs under Yahoo, participated with that whole thing. So I was going to Japan pretty often in those days and got a sense of what was going on. And now I'm so excited to go back because they have dealt with no inflation. And because the country was sort of closed and they didn't use any of those COVID lockdown policies, and there's not really any businesses that went out that closed, and the economy of Japan sort of stayed in a bubble, in a snow globe. It's been preserved in that small little envelope, this little enclave. And what it ended up doing is, if you go to Japan now, there was this idea that Japan was so expensive 30 years ago. Tokyo was the most expensive place in the world to live, and it was crazy, and da-da-da. But now, if you go to Japan, everything's super cheap. Like, you can get an amazing apartment renting for, $500 a month, like an amazing apartment. Everything, they still have like $5 lunches there everywhere, right? Like, if you look at the Big Mac index, probably the best economic metric in the world for purchasing power, the Big Mac there is still under $5. It's an amazing thing. So all this to say, Satoshi Nakamoto, the name, is really a harbinger of things to come in America. So if they are doing this, basically it's the last straw. Yield curve control, what they're engaging in is the end of their line. There's no other, tools in the toolbox. I worked with central bankers for years, Mark Carney, before he went to England. I worked with him in the Senate in Canada, and they'd always talk about their toolbox. We have a toolbox. We have many things in the toolbox. Well, the toolbox is spent. They're at their last tool, which is this one, and we're there. So Japan overnight, major news. You're probably not going to hear about it in our normal news because they like to engage in the following, and that's what we're going to be talking about this morning. So the fakest news of the day. We're going to start with the absolute fakest news of the day. And now that I'm going to tell you, so this is kind of a corollary to what we saw yesterday and when we talked about the Murray-Gell-Mann amnesia, social amnesia, which is when you read a newspaper article and you're an expert and you read what they're saying and you know the newspaper article was written by an idiot, right? And then you turn the page and then you're dealing with a subject that you're not an expert in, and all of a sudden you give them credibility and you're like, wow, I didn't know that. Da, da, da. So the Gell-Mann amnesia is to assume that there isn't someone else in the world who's an expert in that subject, who thinks that article is as stupid and idiotic as the one that you had just read, which you were an expert in. One of the best ways to clue in on this for Murray Gell-Mann amnesia for Bitcoiners is like when you see any, even a crypto publication will say the alleged creator of Bitcoin, that guy from Australia. And when you hear that as a Bitcoiner, right away you say, if you're even using the word alleged, like, don't read the article. You're off the reservation here. You don't know what you're talking about. But if you kept reading that whatever publication, and whatever article you read next is as tainted as the article where they would say alleged creator. So that's a very simple example. But this goes with the Murray Gell-Mann amnesia. So if Gell-Mann amnesia didn't exist, we probably wouldn't have it. Wouldn't be able to sustain it because they would be people will. But this is the other trick that is done. So almost all news comes from Gell-Mann amnesia and mind reading, right? Now that I've said it, mind reading. I'm going to show you the example in CNN. Now that I've said that most news is created through mind reading, believe it or not, you're going to say that's not true. But I'm going to give you an example, and then after this, you'll be able to apply it to stories that you see all the time, and you're going to notice that the number one trick used to finish an article, to write an article, is when the journalist literally just goes into the mind of the person doing the thing and just knows what they're thinking. So this one comes at us from a woman named Frita Gittis, and boy, is she mad about Elon Musk's peace plans. Whoa, listen to what she's going on about. So she is a CNN opinion writer, And that, like, if you want the fakest news in the world, right, the most amount of mind reading, if you want to train your eye to see mind readers in action, read the CNN opinion pieces, because it's just pure mind reading. It's only mind reading. That is the only journalistic skill they have. She's got degrees. She went to some schools, blah, blah, you get it, international expert. So here's what she says. But since Elon Musk's weighing in on heavily consequential matters, the rest of the world has to worry about the impact and wonder whose side he's on. What are the principles, moral, ethical, financial, that drives his rambunctious forays into world affairs? So basically right here, she's on solid ground, right? She's saying, what's he up to? What are his principles, right? What's he doing here? Why is this important? Now, she does the whole article to get to what he's thinking, right? She does something called list persuasion, where you make a list of things and you think that none of them are really good reasons, but if you put the list together, maybe it will persuade someone, right? Maybe if I say a bunch of things. So it's like he likes wealthy people, and he's getting the support of dictators. And she goes on about how people reacted to this, and she sounds like a Reuters bot who says, she might be, but apparently she's a real human being. I looked into her just to find out what her story was. I wanted to see if she had mind-reading abilities, right? I had to see if she had any mind-reading abilities before I did this. But apparently she is not a mind reader. So she goes on about, how he's now trying to make some money off the satellites. So he's maybe not that great because he's wondering where the money is, right? Wondering where that is. And then she asks, what's in it for Musk? The man who put many thousands of people in electric cars, who turned spaceflight into a for-profit business, is now trying out a different vehicle. This is an ego trip, right? So he wasn't content on taking a trip in an electric car, or taking a trip in a rocket or the Hyperloop. He's on an ego trip. Imagine if he could solve the Ukraine war. Nobel Peace Prize, anyone? Well, yeah, maybe. I mean, she's guessing that he wants to win the Nobel Peace Prize and solve the war, and maybe that's the reason why he's trying to solve the war, to win the Nobel Peace Prize. Well, I hate to break it to this journalist, but not a lot of people respect the Nobel Prize. So right away, the mind reading, she's filling in the blanks, but it's not even nearly that egregious yet. She keeps going. And basically trying to get to what he means by all this, right? And here's the main thrust of it. he claimed he wanted to buy Twitter and put former President Donald Trump back on the platform because he's a free speech absolutist. Free speech in the complicated, fast-changing age of social media is one of the topics where experts say he lacks a serious understanding of the extraordinary complex issues a major platform. This is their best argument, right? It's really complicated, and experts say that free speech is complicated, so therefore he's not great at it. Here's her sort of conclusion. Musk's restless mind could use a moment to focus on what it is that he believes. He appears to want to be one of the good guys, but then he doesn't seem quite sure. Maybe that's what happens when you're the mighty ruler of your business empire and seem to think that makes you one of the masters of the universe. So she thinks that he's on an ego trip and he wants to be the master of the universe, and no one can tell him no, and therefore it should all work out. So what she's basically saying is he's Madonna, right? Has anyone seen the Madonna stuff lately with her face, and she's got some troubles because it looks like she had too many operations, and then like her butt has got some issues too because its proportions are kind of weird, and then just the way the face is now shaped, it's Michael Jackson-y, right? We're getting into Michael Jackson territory. And what I see there is an example of a person who no one around them has said no, and you're on an ego trip, right? Now, is Madonna a talented person in her own right, right? She was absolutely a genius in what she did in her times. And her skills are somewhat similar to Elon Musk. She was a master brander. Elon Musk, a master brander, marketer, right? We always remember, Elon Musk is not an engineer. Remember that. He never went engineer, not an engineer. He taught himself engineering. He taught himself engineering. He kind of went to school in Canada, but was a physicist. He didn't really spend much time in university. He's really a marketer who learned other stuff. So the skills do sort of overlap. What this journalist is arguing is that she knows that this is a person who is out to win a Nobel Prize, is trying to go on an ego trip and trying to get these things done. Now, when I look at it, right, when I look at it, I see someone who simply is trying to build the future, right? They see what needs to be done in the future. We need better transport. We have to fix some of the things in our world today, and maybe this will do. And, you know, I don't really see the desire there to win a prize, but maybe it's there. However, if we're just looking at the facts, right, if we're just looking at the facts, working for peace, despite not having a degree or university experience to work for peace, doesn't really preclude it. And for these people to now write articles where they're literally going into his brain and saying what he's thinking in order to criticize him, right? You're seeing a formula that the fake news lives off of. It's either Murray Gell-Mann amnesia, social amnesia, or it's mind reading. I mean, literally mind reading. That's the only thing that was in the article. The only reason why she can criticize him, besides the list of stuff that's sort of related to the story, he knows dictators and speaks to dictators, and you know, he's not an expert, but he does crazy things, and he wants to put Trump back on social media, but he's not an expert and doesn't know. This is mind reading, right? This is absolute mind reading. So be careful, because mind reading doesn't end, and we can see more of it, right? We can see much more of the mind reading. Let me just get to my, what I did with these. Yeah, here we go. So we've got everyone now doing that sort of mind reading trick as well on Kanye, right? Kanye West, yay, right? This is from Huru. For 2 years when what journalism was Reuters bots. For 2 years now, yeah, journalism was, yeah, Reuters is a big part of it, right? So mind reading, right, has been one of the banes of Kanye West's, Ye West's existence for a while. You know, it's all prescribing his psychological problems from afar. You know, he's got this problem, he's got that problem. So everyone is there saying what's wrong inside of Kanye's mind, what's going on inside of Kanye's mind, right? Everyone seems to know, and most of the articles out there, like the articles that I just mentioned on Elon, are literally about mind reading what Kanye West is trying to do, right? They're mind reading. Now, I bring this up because we saw some news yesterday with the George Floyd issue and Kanye West that immediately made my brain go on fire, right? Immediately, which is this. The family of George Soros is going to sue Kanye West for $250 million for his comments related to fentanyl and what happened with George Floyd. Now, here's the thing. This was all based on a Candace Owens documentary that had a look at what the coroner actually discovered in George Floyd's death. And what she argues is, based on facts, not mind reading, that a political decision was made around it. Now, I'm going on the exact story that the court said, and they said at the time, it definitely was the knee. But here's the thing. When you actually sue people, you have to go through the process of discovery, which means you can start arguing all of this stuff, right? So it's outside of the world of mind reading now. You can actually start subpoenaing information, you can start getting documents, you can start getting proof, you can start putting together your point of view. And the difference here becomes when you get into issues of misinformation, libel, slander, the greatest case in America that showed how this works was with Henry Ford. Henry Ford was called an ignoramus years ago, right? He was called an ignoramus years ago. And if you didn't know about Henry Ford, he invented the automobile and all the parts that he invented and everything like that on a farm. He had no formal education at all, right? He was a tinkerer and a solver of problems. And when Henry Ford was criticized as a ignoramus, he sued the person who said it for libel. So they go to trial, they do discovery, right? And the only protection against libel is to prove that it's true. So what the defendant in this case, the person who called Henry Ford an ignoramus, had to do was prove that Henry Ford in fact was an ignoramus. And so because Henry Ford had zero education, the whole trial turned into a spectacle of Henry Ford having to answer trivia questions which he couldn't, and nothing to do with anything else. So he had very little education and kind of no confidence in that part of his own education. So it was, when was the War of 1812? He couldn't answer. It was all these kinds of things, right? Like, when was the US Independence War? He didn't know, right? And he would just guess. He would say crazy numbers. Absolutely no clue what was going on about any of this stuff. And in the end, the judge said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Ford, you are an ignoramus, right? Despite being one of the richest people in the world, you're an ignoramus. So you can't, you lose, right? You can't complain that this guy called you an ignoramus." So that is basically how this discovery thing works, right? So he thought, for sure, he called me an ignoramus. I'm so rich. We can prove I'm not. And in the end, the facts of the matter were, in this case, he wasn't an ignoramus. It ended up helping his popularity, of course, because everyone wrote in and it was one of the first sort of American trials where everyone was focused on it. It was like a sensational trial at the time. It was 100 years ago. Everyone was paying attention to it. And it was in all the newspapers. And when he lost, it was, sort of everyone dunked on him and all the experts and had a good laugh. But the people, the average people, were like, "No, you're like us. You're just a guy. It doesn't matter if you're rich. We love you." Ford sales went through the roof as a result. And so here we are now with the Kanye West thing, and it's going to have to go to discovery, right? We're going to have to litigate. We are, if they sue him, right? Now, I understand you can say things about dead people and it might not go to civil process. That's part of the conversation. So I don't know about that procedural aspect. So maybe it doesn't go anywhere. Maybe it gets tossed. But if it doesn't get tossed, if they proceed with the trial, what we're going to see is discovery around what happened with the coroner. Now, if you tell me that when I look through America, like with the money, right? The money broken, right? Politics broken, the media broken, right? Almost every institution right now that we look at, I mean, that's why we Bitcoin, right? The money has infected all these institutions and nothing works. I mean, it literally does not work. Whatever machine we built to win World War II, we never shut it off. It's still running and it doesn't work anymore. It's an old aircraft carrier from the 1940s. with all the complexity required to run that, yet no one really knows how to do it, and it's not moving anywhere. So great ship World War II, the current configuration of the US government, which has been in place for 80 years now, nothing works except the coroner's office, I guess, right? Except the coroner's office in Minnesota. I guess we can have faith that they know how to make the right choice, they have the right systems in place, and they were able to produce the result. So you can go watch Candace Owens' documentary. I don't think she comes out and says exactly, I watched it, I don't remember if she came out and said exactly what she thought happened. She was simply bringing up a point that people brought up that summer, that maybe we didn't get the right result, right? Maybe we didn't get the right result. Now, we're going to talk more about the George Floyd thing in a second. I do want to get to just a couple of these because it's not over. The George Floyd thing has a little more about what we're going to talk about today. So the mind reading thing, right? We're mind reading. Discovery, the legal system, if it works correctly, basically eliminates the mind reading risk. It's that, reality hits the mushy interpretations of pseudo intellectual mind readers. And when it hits like that, try to watch Ye call on Soros while listening to you at the same time. Yeah, we're going to get to the Ye call on Soros. That's a big part of this. So, you've got the only way out now. The only way, that was from who? The only way out of this is discovery and limiting the ability to mind read and limiting the ability to basically create fake news out of the mind reading, right? Because it's the mind reading that is the entry point into the fake news distribution. So in this case, with discovery, you're going to see what really happened, right? And if we find out what happened and it's different than the official narrative, how is anyone going to be able to even intellectualize it? Now, I'm not trying to relitigate what happened back then, right? Just like with elections, I am disgusted and irritated when I hear anyone talking about the 2020 election, the 2016 election, the 2012 election, the 2008 election, all of these things, right? Elections are about moving on. Right? If you don't have confidence in any one of them, that's fine. I mean, you shouldn't have confidence in any of them. But accepting the result is still what makes us be able to move forward, right? And getting it right next time is the only priority we have. Like that's my main problem with Trump in the current environment. If Trump only spoke about the next election, I would be fine. I don't want to hear him relitigate. What are we going to do? Change? We're not going to do that, right? We're not going to change what happened the last 4 years. You got to move on. You got to have the next one and see what happens. The next one and see what happens. So in this case, discovery, right? Discovery, just like any one of these cases that went in the United States for the 2020 election, they never did discovery. Whenever someone says, oh, the courts found, they didn't have jurisdiction, right? No one actually did an audit of machines. That would have happened in any amount of discovery or legal trial that was seen through. We never got there, right? And again, I'm not saying we should. I'm not saying we should. I'm saying in the next one, we should have systems in place that allow us to be able to audit an election properly and be able to look at it so that we're not in this position again, right? So that's a big part of it. And the same thing is happening, if you want to see another story, the governor of California currently, Gavin Newsom, right? The current governor of California, Gavin Newsom. His wife was part of the Harvey Weinstein, Harvey Weinstein, he was the serial rapist who produced a lot of movies and made women stars pleasure him in order to get roles and things like that. So he's been, I think, found guilty of. I don't remember following the whole trial, but he was found guilty of some forms, I think, of rape. But I don't know the exact details. I stopped following the Harvey Weinstein story, a long time ago. But I bring it up because of this. So Gavin Newsom's wife was part of that stuff, and she said the same thing happened to her. But his defense, right? His defense, Harvey Weinstein's defense, is that it was a willing, consensual relationship. So here's an example, right, of Discovery coming in and changing the terms. He showed emails, he showed correspondence between Gavin Newsom's wife and himself a few years ago that showed a consensual sexual relationship. So this is how Discovery works, right? When you allege something and mind read in the real life, we can all move on because it's just media. But the minute you get it into courts and Discovery is there, the world does change. And you're not able to use mind reading anymore. You're not able to use list persuasion anymore. You got to have the facts. And so if this George Floyd thing goes through, it's very, very good, I think, because we're going to be uncovering and discussing things that probably didn't have enough attention in the first place. And if you remember back in the summer of 2020, it's not like there wasn't the most political pressure we've ever seen on an institution. In this case, the Minnesota coroner's office, or whatever, if it was the Minneapolis coroner office, I don't remember, whatever that was. A lot of intense political pressure there. A lot of intense political pressure. So we're going to find out to what extent the political pressure was applied, if the result was correct, and all the rest of it. So the trial, very good thing. Very, very good thing in order to get the truth out and to start processing what happened, right? And to get rid of the mind reading stuff. Because again, you know, you get Ye, who you know, is one of the biggest victims of this mind reading phenomena, right? Everyone mind reads him. That's why they all diagnose him with mental problems. This is from Huru. Also, little thought that just occurred to me. The man likens his name change to Ali's switch from Clay. Maybe, just maybe, people who talk about him from a place of respect should start using his chosen name. I agree with that. I try to use the Ye name. I don't always get it right. It's, you know, Ye is so short, and it's kind of a fun word, you know, yay. So sometimes it's almost like you're putting grammar into, I don't know. I haven't been able to make it as comfortable coming out of my mouth as I would hope. But I agree. He should be called Ye, and I'm for anyone calling anyone by any name they choose. On the gender thing, totally for it. Here, you know, this is a really good frame for what's going to happen next. If anyone heard the Barack Obama podcast the other day, you can see again how amazing Obama really is at communicating and framing things. And you see just what a loss it's been to not have him around framing everything for the Democrats. But he said something in the podcast that's going to work against the Democrats in the end, and I'll explain it right now. So in the podcast, he made the most obvious American frame for what's going on with the trans thing, and even the calling Ye West by his chosen name, right? So Barack Obama said the following. It sounds simple, but I'll give you why it's a huge context. He said, look, Democrats have lost the narrative here, right? We should just, you know, do our best to not insult people, right? Do our best to not insult them, but don't lose your mind if we make a mistake, right? And that's kind of where I'm at. Like, you know, anyone in the world, if they want to be called a different name, a different gender, he, him, she, they, I'm down, I'm okay, right? Here's what I want in return. Just don't be mad at me if I make a mistake. Like if I go to a coffee shop and I've never met the barista in my life, and it's a biological male dressed as a woman, and I say, thanks, dude, like, you can't get mad at me. It was a mistake. I can't go around getting it right all the time. But what Obama said, this is why it becomes important. He's framed the Democrats' problem here. Right? He's framed their problem. Basically, you're putting the wrong things as a priority, and you shouldn't get so angry about this stuff. Well, here's what's going to happen. If the Democrats lose in a few weeks, everyone's going to go back to that podcast and use it as the frame for why they lost. It's Obama, for God's sakes, right? So if they do lose in a couple of weeks in the US midterms, which are just around the corner, and if people go back and do what you're supposed to do every time you lose an election, which is, soul searching. You go through the facts and find out what you did wrong. His comment is going to be the main frame going forward, right? His comment will be the main frame going forward. So from now on, you're going to have that frame of, let's just do our best. And I think 99% of Americans are there, right? It's the same with the statues, right? The same with the statues. Like, I don't want statues. It's not my priority to take down a Thomas Jefferson statue, but I don't want to insult my neighbors. If my neighbors are uncomfortable with it, it's the least I can do. I don't give a shit about statues, right? I don't have some. Now, I would prefer for them to stay for the historical lessons and all that stuff, but it's not really vital. My neighbor's happiness and if it says to my neighbor they're not actually part of the future of America, it's unacceptable, right? Everyone has to be along for this. We're making it up as we go along. And if we don't get it right, we got to course correct every single time, right? You got to course correct. So that's, a big part of it, right? A big part of it. Now the Harvey Weinstein, Gavin Newsom piece, right? That all is part of that discovery argument, where we're going to get back to basically not mind reading around important subjects, right? Around important subjects. And I tie it to the election stuff, and I'm going to tie it to education and the George Floyd piece right now at the end, right? So I've been talking a lot. I don't normally watch local races in the United States, so like Senate races or governor races. But the one in Arizona is so amazing, and I've brought it up a few times. You had Katie Hobbs, who's the Democrat candidate, yesterday again, and here's her quote. So she says, where is it? Well, basically, yeah, my notes are a little off today. So basically she says, school choice is no good. It's not going to happen. And she has this, the moronic uptalk. Have you ever heard of moronic uptalk? It's when you end every sentence on a positive inflection. Are you going to go to eating today? Or no, you shouldn't ask them as a question. I'm going eating today, So she's talking about education in this really irritating cadence, and talking about how school choice doesn't work. Everyone needs a great public education, and making parents into the customers is the wrong thing. Kids are the customers. We have to treat them as the customers. We got to make it better for them, and et cetera, et cetera. Okay, fine. Compare this to the Republican candidate, Carrie Lake, who is so well-spoken. She smashed the media again yesterday in one of the most vibrant counterattacks you'll see. Just so well-spoken, and talking about elections and getting them right in the future. Exactly what I'm talking about. Not talking about past elections. Just saying that everyone is doubted if they don't win the election, right? So everyone, if they don't win an election, seems to come up with these quotes about, oh, it was illegitimate. So a lot of talk about 2016, right? A lot of talk about 2000, right? It's not the first time. So what she's saying is, we just want to get it right in the future. We just want to get it right in the future, right? So, but she's a big proponent of school choice. She's a big proponent of school choice. Now, here's the George Floyd thing that I learned and that helped me as a Bitcoiner understand education problems in America. And I think we have sort of a real Bitcoin-focused, Bitcoin-inspired education system that I learned through getting rid of my own brainwashing that was inflicted upon me pre-George Floyd. So when the George Floyd thing did happen, right, and that's why, we're not just like elections and George Floyd. I'm happy discovery is happening, right? But we don't want to take away from the actual social change that happened at the time. And so even if there is a legal case, and even if the Kanye West thing goes through and we find out it's different and all that stuff, then that's fine. It shouldn't change the soul searching and everything that went on in the summer of 2020 in order for us to move on as a society. And this is what I learned, and why it's important to the Arizona race, and why education might very well get fixed because of George Floyd, right? Because of George Floyd. And here it is. I'm 100% for school choice, right? 100% for charter schools. When Katie Hobbs says that the client in education is the student, she's wrong. The client is actually the government, right? Because they are the ones who spend the money. And if it's a public education system, the school system is really just trying to appeal to the money, follow the money, right? Where does the money come from? It comes from the government. So you try to appeal to the people running the purse strings. The people who hold the money are your client, right? There's no way around that fact. Follow the money means the person who's spending the money is the client. Now, in the public education system as it is, the client, being a parent, becomes abstracted because they pay taxes, and then the money goes to a government, and then the government is the one in charge of actually releasing the money, so therefore that's what makes them a client. Now, I'm 100% for the charter school thing, 100% for, because it shifts the client to the parent, right? So they're the ones now who get the coupon, right? They're usually done with coupons, where the coupon is worth whatever the money would have been spent on that kid to go to the public school. So say it's $20,000 a year, right? So you get the coupon for $20,000 and you give it to the school, and then you can actually, choose. The parent becomes the person who's choosing that school. So there's these two things. But here's the George Floyd piece that taught me about the problem with this plan. And even Republican brainwashing, right? We're all susceptible to it. Not Republican, I mean brainwashing, Republican and Democrat. So not everyone is susceptible to the Republican thing, but in this case I was, and I'll explain to what happened. And why the George Floyd thing did open my eyes. So, to many things. So you've got the schools, the government is the client. If you go to charter, the teachers become, the parents become the client, right? So government client, parents client. When we do talk about an ideal system, what we are talking about is how to make the students the client. And where my interpretation was totally wrong, totally brainwashed, was the following. When Republicans say, make the teachers the clients, the parents the clients, what they're basically saying is you need to have a parent. You need to have an active, engaged parent. It's actually not the solution to everything. It's like imagining that, we don't do any fat shaming on this show at all for this reason. It's thinking that people who are overweight want that and they're just a choice away. They're just discipline away from it going away. That's not true. It's not true, right? It's not an actual solution. We can say that, and this is what I learned, right? It was easy to dismiss the lack of quality education in the Black community, the African-American community, by saying, well, they just need stronger families, and they just need, even what Obama used to say, where's the missing Black fathers, right? You can say that until you're blue in the face. It might be true, but it doesn't solve anything. Who cares if it's true? Like, it just makes you get the problem to go away in your mind. And that was the brainwashing, right? That's what I learned from the George Floyd thing, that that the solution to the education problem in America is not just, oh, you need better parents. That doesn't solve anything. It's just an answer to a question. It's not a solution to a problem. It's an answer to a question, right? An answer to a question is not the same thing as a solution to a problem. And in a lot of ways, when we push, now it's a better system to have parents engaged. It's 100%, and that's why I'm 100% down with it. So I'm not arguing against charter schools at all. Not even close. Charter schools, engaging parents as the customers and clients in education is great. But how do you get students themselves, children, to be the clients? Well, that comes with basically building better institutions from the ground up, right? And not top down. That literally means local people making their playground an inviting place for kids to come and learn. That means local people running basketball camps, running Bitcoin meetups, running, there's Isaiah Jackson who does a school that teaches a summer camp that teaches Bitcoin to children, right? That's the future. That's the future, where kids voluntarily in the summer go to learn about Bitcoin and have people who want to teach them. They're motivated to teach them, right? So everyone's making choices here. And of course, parents can push kids to go to these camps, but in theory, these camps are open to every kid who wants to go. And you're actually engaging the child now as the customer. And in order to do that, a lot of things have to happen. But if we make it about the child's choice and a child literally following their energy, following what makes them interested, it's sort of the Montessori model, right? Don't be too prescriptive, get them to follow their passion and interest and use whatever motivates them as an exciting endeavor in order to strengthen the education system. So I got some comments here from Huru. Nice reasoning. I use it to explain it to some people. Can you please explain what relation you're making between the George Floyd situation and the parents becoming clients for their children's education? I think I missed a sentence or something. Yeah, I'm not getting it, or anyone in the chat for that matter. Okay, so what I'm basically saying is it's a good thing to make parents, I keep making that mistake. It's a good thing to make parents the clients in education. I'm not arguing against it, but it's not the end result. It's not going to solve it for everyone. The George Floyd thing taught me that I was using Republican psyops, Republican brainwashing, to explain away a problem. Right? When the George Floyd thing happened, did some soul searching, right? And you said, well, if my answer to the education problem in the African American community is they need, basically, the George Floyd situation is bad, right? And you need something better than the George Floyd situation in order to, and by that I mean, did a lot of drugs, wasn't a super engaged dad, I understand. So, if your answer is they just have to be better parents, nothing's going away. And my point is, it's an answer to a question, not a solution to a problem. And it's easy to confuse the two. And Republicans regularly used that logic for people to just ignore the problem. It makes your mind say, we can solve education if we just get their parents involved, so let's just get their parents involved. Maybe in 3 generations, maybe, right? But you might as well say, let's get Gandalf, let's get Harry Potter wizards, and they can do some magic, and then everyone's going to get educated. It's just magic. It's not real, all right? To say that you need more parents engaged in education for the education system to get better, okay, yeah, I need a magic wand to fly. It's not real. It's not real. It's not an answer. It's not a solution to the problem, right? So if you want to solve the problem, and this is what that's really where that's the conclusion I came to with George Floyd. And that's where the Bitcoin thing falls in, right? Bitcoiners are 100% interested in educating in a P2P way, in educating people who don't know about whatever blind spot they have, right? And Bitcoiners share, we call the rabbit hole, right? It's a reading list. The rabbit hole is a reading list of people sharing the thing they learned that someone else taught them in Bitcoin. It's financial, it's health, it's diet, it's working out, it's all this energy stuff. That's why I often say that Bitcoiners are alchemists. We're like the modern alchemists, right? We're interested in lowering our time preference. Right? These are big things. These are big things, and it's education at its highest form, its most advanced level, or at its most basic level, I should say. It's foundational, and from there you can erect a lot of progress. So that's what the George Floyd thing taught me, right? It taught me that basically my answer to the problems in education was too convenient, too easy, didn't solve anything. was fake and magic, and relied on magic. And so if you don't want to rely on magic, right, you need things like what we do in Bitcoin, which is the self-motivated, inspired by the promise and the vision that we all can easily see once you understand Bitcoin. Once you understand Bitcoin, picturing the future becomes pretty simple, pretty easy, I should say, right? You can start to see all the systems that we have work much better, which is why everyone gets so interested in Bitcoin. You can actually start authoring the future on your own in a confident, competent way. And education to me hadn't really been, I thought the charter school thing was everything. That's all we needed. And we would solve everything with charter schools, get parents engaged, everything would be fine. Bitcoin actually shows there's another level to education that's better than charter schools and engaged parents and whatever. The better level is self-motivated people who just want to educate everyone in their community, everyone in their tribe, everyone who wants to be in their tribe, everyone who even comes in the periphery. Like, how often do we Bitcoiners get criticized for speaking about Bitcoin all the time to everyone, anyone who's interested? I mean, that's like literally every Bitcoiner, right? Every Bitcoiner in their own circle, in their own family group, in their own friendship group, in their own tribe, right? That isn't the Bitcoin version of their tribe. That is their pre-Bitcoin tribe. We'll call them Bitcoin people who don't stop talking about Bitcoin. Maybe it's just me, but I've seen it in the environment a lot, right? And so from there, it's just a matter of applying what we've learned in education through events, through getting together, through the meetup culture, and exporting that to America, right? It's the Bitcoin meetup education plan. And I didn't see how that could go into all of education until George Floyd and the whole thing. So that's what George Floyd did for me, right? So I don't want to relitigate what happened, other than to find out if institutions were broken, fentanyl, all that's important. All of that's important. And let's even talk quickly about Kanye and his address yesterday, right? Kanye did a thing on George Soros. So my thing about George Soros is, and I think this is kind of where Kanye is, I guess, going off the rails a little here, as far as, I don't mean off the rails in terms of anything more than just keeping his messaging tight. I'm personally not a person who really worries about George Soros too much. I think he's a guy who made some money and made a ton of mistakes in how he was deploying it. I really now see more elder abuse going on. I read, and we've talked about it on the show, he had an article on the Wall Street Journal talking a little bit about his motivations to, or it was the New York Times or something, his motivations for giving so much money to public prosecutors and all these down ballot questions in America. We call it down ballot. So you have the president and the people on top of the ballot. That's when you go to vote in America. By the way, if you're not from America, the list of stuff you vote for is like pages long on the voting day. You don't have to vote for everything, but it's like president, governor, everything that's relevant to your jurisdiction is there. And in places like California, there's tons of referendum questions each time, and all that stuff sort of gets included. So he went down ballot years ago and started funding all the people who you wouldn't think were important, and in the end start changing prosecutions. And so the whole idea around George Soros is based on this stuff. What I saw from the article he wrote in the New York Times explaining all of this stuff was someone who didn't write the article himself. He's like 90 years old, so someone wrote it for him. And I think it's elder abuse at this point. Right now, I'm not saying the money isn't going to things that are crazy and all that stuff. I don't agree with all of it. Who says Washington Post can't worry about Soros because they have no idea and no desire to know what he's doing with open society in Africa and the rest of the poor world. Ye's about to break that lid right open unless he dies before. Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's gonna die. I mean, you see that stuff. These are just facts, by the way. Yeah, I don't know much about open society in Africa. I really don't. I know what he's doing here, and it's somewhat effective. I think he gets more attention for it than it probably deserves. I think he just gave away money and doesn't know what's going on. That's my reading, but I could be wrong, guys. I mean, I'm not a George Soros expert, but it's a little bit like I think Kanye is directionally correct in what he's doing, and I'm never gonna say when I said off the rails. What I mean is I don't see it. I think he's wasting a bit of energy by not hitting the target exact, but I could be off. Huru says people who go against open society usually die or get blacklisted so bad they need to exile. Yeah, again, I don't know. I don't know much about open society. But if he runs for president, like you know what he said in one of those interviews, it's like come and get me. So and if they get him, some little yay will pop up, and some little Pac, he said, some little Tupac or some little yay. And that's the truth, right? So I'm not too worried about that. I continue to believe Kanye West is going to be the president of the United States. I think he can do it in 2024. So there you go. All right, did I miss anything today, guys? We've gone a little long. Oh yeah, the Chris Cuomo part. Well, what I noticed from the Chris Cuomo interview with who the phrase being flagged by spam as YouTube. Oh yeah, there. Wow. So Huru's comments are not coming through into YouTube, apparently. I'll have a look, Huru. Yeah, I'll have a look. I'll look into it a bit, find out what's happening. I wish. I mean, I'm super bullish on Africa, so big fan of Nigeria and hope things work out there. I follow lots of people on Twitter from Nigeria, and I'm sort of planning. My like number one goal in the next 10 years, I guess you could say, is to move to for a little while to Mauritania, which is like this tiny little country in North Africa, south of Morocco, because the eye of the Sahara, the eye of Africa, is there, and I believe we're going to find artifacts in the whole area, and sort of antediluvian. Do you know what antediluvian is? Anyone? Antediluvian is before the flood, and I believe there'll be antediluvian artifacts there, and I believe the pyramids are antediluvian, so pre-flood artifacts. So the pyramids of Egypt, antediluvian, I think, and I think we're going to find a lot more antediluvian things there. So it's my dream to be north of Nigeria, looking for antediluvian artifacts, like Indiana Jones stuff. All right, team. Well, I'm going to look up some of this stuff, and we'll talk about it again tomorrow. Our last show from New York tomorrow morning, and then we'll be back. All right, guys. Thanks for sticking around. Oh, Huru, that's where Soros is seeing his pawns falling. If you're going to look at macro things, you need to look at the whole world. You're right, Huru. I do. I'm not. Don't want to ignore a big, beautiful continent. All right, team. See you tomorrow.